Okay, you are listening to Loretta Nash's show. Apparently, I had this on Spreaker for 10 years and didn't even and forgot about it. I am reading from I I'll Take My Stand by 12 Southerners. I just got finished reading the intro. Now I'm going with the first article that is in here. Down at the bottom of this page, it says, note, this article is made up largely from from articles of the authors that have appeared in the sewage sewagely review at and Harper's Magazine. That's what says. And it says reconstructed but unrevenated, unregenerative. Yeah, reconstructed but unregenerative. By John Crow Ransom. That's what his name is. So let's see what he has to say. Okay, it get my mouth straight one of these days. And I apologize. I'm a very horrible reader, especially out loud. I've always have been. Okay. It is not a not it is out of fashion in these days to look forward rather than to look backwards rather than forwards. About the only American given to it is some unconstructed Southerner who persists in his regard of certain terrain, a certain history, and a certain inherited way of living. He is punished as his crime deserves. He feels himself in an American scene as an golly, a weird word, an anachronism, an anachronism, yeah, and knows he is felt by his neighbors as a reproach. Of course, he is tolerably harmless reproach. Of course, he is a tolerably harmless reproach. He is like some quaint eccentric eccentric, no, eccentric, but fixed principles who is thoughtfully and almost pridefully accepted by the village as a rare exhibit in the antique kind. His position is secure for from the interference of the police, but it is not. But it is of rare, ambiguous dignity. I'm sorry, I screwed it. I really butchered it. His position is secure from the interference of the police, but is of an rather ambiguous dignity. I wish now that he were not so entirely taken for granted, and that as a reproach he might bear a barb and inflict and sting. Might bear a barb and inflict a sting. I wish that the whole force of my own generation in the South would get behind his principles and make them an ideal which the nation at large would have to reckon with. But first, I will describe him in a light of, gotta turn the page, of the position he seems now to occupy actually before the public. His fierce devotion is to a lost cause, though it grieves me that his contemporaries are so sure it is lost. They are so far from fearing him and his example that they even, in the excuse of confidence, offer him a little honor, a little petty. As a Southerner, I have observed this indulgence, and I try to be grateful. Obviously, it does not constitute a danger to the Republic. Distinctly, it is not treasonable. They are good enough to attribute a sort of glamour to the Southern life as it defined to them in a popular tradition. They like to use the South as the nearest available locus for the scene of their sentimental song, and sometimes they send their daughters to the Southern seminaries. Not so much, of course, is to be made of the last gesture, for they do not expose to this hazard their sons, who in our still very masculine order will have to discharge the functions of citizenship, and who must accordingly be sternly educated in the principles of progress at progressive institutions of learning. But it does not seem to make so much difference what principle of general character the young women acquire, since they are not likely to be impaired by principles in their particular functions, such as virtue and domestic duties. And so, at suitable seasons and on the main line trains, one may see them in some numbers, flying south or flying north like migrant birds, and one may wonder to what extent their philosophy of life will be affected by 2 or 3 years in the South. One must remember that probably their parents have already made the calculations and have prepared to answer not much. The Southerner must know that in fact he does not well know. And in fact, he does very well know that his antique conservatism does not exert a great influence against the American progressive doctrine. The Southern idea today is down, and the progressive or American idea is up. But the historian and the philosopher who take views that are thought to be respectfully longer and deeper than most may very well reverse this order and find that the Southern idea, rather than the American, has in its favor the authority of example and the approval of theory. Okay. Some prophet may even find that possible to expect that it will yet rise again. I will propose a thesis which seems to have about as much contingency of generalization usually have. The South is unique on on this continent for having found and defended a culture which was according to the European principles of culture. The European principles had better look to the South if they are to be perpetuated, penetrated, penetrated in this country. Okay, that was just the first part. Now we're in the second part. The nearest of the European cultures which we would examine is that of England, and this is, of course, the right one, of course, in this case. Quite aside from our convenience, England was exactly the motto employed by the South. Insofar as Southern culture was not quite indigenous, and there is in the South every day an Anglophily Anglophily statement quite anomalous in the American scene. Ugh, got some weird words in here. England differs from America doubtless in several respects, but most notably in the fact that England did her pioneering an indefinite number of centuries ago, did it well enough, and have been living pretty tranquil on her establishment ever since, with influence upheaved and replacements. Yeah, replacements. The customs and instructions of England seem to be an American observance every observe to the American observer very fixed and ancient. There is no doubt that the English tradition expressed itself in many more or less intangible ways, but it expressed itself most importantly in the maternal establishment, and by this I mean the stable economic system by which Englishmen are content to take their livelihood from the physical environment. The chief concern of England's half mythical pioneers, as the pioneers everywhere, was with finding the way to make a living. Eventually they found it, but fortunately the methods they worked out proved transmittable trans transmittable, provided in fact the main reliance of the succeeding generations. Okay. And then I'm going to stop right there. Interesting. Yeah, we do got a lot of English influence. Uh, I met an English person from the Isle of Wight. Hey, Victoria. Uh, when I went to college, and I watched a lot of sci-fi English sci-fi. You are listening to Loretta Nash Show, and I'll see you back in a minute.